we came from your area.
Yes.
What made you choose Portsmouth?
What made me choose?
It's Portsmouth to do your...
It was a long way away from Essex and my mother and stepfather.
Right.
First. And going back to the foundation, Braintree had a thing. They had a 100% record of getting people into degree courses, so they aimed low. No, that's not. That was exactly what they used to do. They aim low, which is, it's a bit, unambitious perhaps. But so they knew all the courses quite well, and then they would say, well, that would suit you going there, and they would send you there. But I think that I could have gone to a London college, but they sent hardly anybody to the London colleges because they were too ambitious. They're too competitive. So I went to Portsmouth because it was a long way away, and they thought that was one of the courses and that was great. It was a very open course. You could do anything. You could wander into any department. It was small. What was weird about Portsmouth was that it was just fine art. So there were 100 fine art students in a block, and then 6,000 all other sorts, scientists mainly, I think. So it was a very isolated little block. So we became this tiny little community, and that was good for me, I think, as a. So no, I could be a big fish in a small pond. That was good. I think I would have been crushed by St Martin's or Central or somewhere like that. Because I wouldn't have been able to sort of develop my own sort of quirkiness or my own character. It would have been. I'd have become trendy. That's the thing. I've seen it happen. We had good visiting lecturers. Helen Chadwick, Ed Allington, Anish Kapoor. Quite a lot of people who were doing well. Richard Wilson used to come down there. In those days,
Martin Barrett.
Martin Barrett, Martin Barrett. Yeah, but he was in the same. He was in the year above me, I think, at Portsmouth. Yes. Anyway, any more questions? Yes.
What kind of things did you have in your degree show?
There is something from my degree show in the museum here upstairs, which was it was a kind of big table, which I made out of railway sleepers. And then I put these kind of sort of things that looked like they were archaeological finds on it. So there was a helmet, which was upstairs, and there was a big bronze-covered Bible, and a kind of little sort of tomb, and various little ceramic things. But yeah, that's what I was going for, the old vibe. I was into patination. I was quite influenced by this artist called Larry Nee, who used to come as a visiting lecturer. I don't think you ever hear of him now, but he was a guy who used to dig up Victorian rubbish dumps. He was one of the first people to dig up Victorian rubbish dumps, and he used to make art out of all the stuff he found, like all the little broken china figures and old bottles and bits of metalwork and stuff like that. I was quite influenced by him at the time, and I took acid. That absolute bad, really. Drugs and creativity. Oh, it's not a good mix. When you're saying that, I do like, my favourite combination of drawing now is the sketchbook and my box of bell pens, X Factor on the telly, and about 2 pints, and I'm about the right moment for drawing now. It's a good combo. Yeah.
Changes and everything going on in education and art.
You have to speak up, sorry.
There are a lot of changes going on in art education currently.
Yeah.
And a bit of a deconstruction of the universities and potentially threats to art colleges. Do you think that that's a positive thing? Do you think we need to change? Or what's your perspective on that?
What, on the deconstruction of an examination of what the art schools are for or what they do?
Kind of what they do and this sort of very institutionalised environment that art is currently sort of operating in. Do you think that it's being sort of dramatically changed through funding and all the other sort of...
I think it's becoming risk averse. I think that might be the thing. Because creativity is mistakes, so therefore I think the problem is that, that you get kind of students now who sue the college because they got a third. Yeah, because you were shit. Never turned up. So it's very tricky. And not everyone's a genius. And there's this idea that, that compared to other sort, I'm on the board of governors of the UAL, and there's this thing that you're meant to have certain qualifications, and you're meant to take in certain amount of students with a certain amount of these grades, like A star, whatever. But of course, you don't judge a student on their exam results when they come into. They might get A in art and still be rubbish. I mean, a friend of mine who teaches at the Slade, he said, if I see another A-level portfolio, I'll kill myself. Because they all look the same. And so, you know, we judge the students that enter colleges on a much more intuitive level. You know, my Latin teacher at school used to think the art teacher just threw the work down the stairs and judged it depending on what stair it lay. And to a certain extent, you know, it's a completely. But of course, you know, it's a lovely consensus about what is good art. It's a very interesting thing, you know. But we have to take risk, and of course, there's going to be lots of rubbish done and money wasted. But that's the nature of creativity. And of course, the big art schools can brag amazing rosters of alumni, but you know, they're also got huge rosters of not so alumni, haven't they? You know? So it's like. That's the nature of it. But of course, those people go out into the world, and I think there's a force for good. People who've been to art school, they're kind of easygoing and a bit more, you know. It's a more self-reliant and a kind of different way of looking at the world. And I think that is what you learn at art school. And I think one of the big shames that's happened because of lack of funding and the expense of going to art school now is that kids don't leave home. So they're kind of, you know, my friend, this evening, I'm doing a talk at UEL out in Docklands. And the same talk exactly if you're thinking of turning up. And he says a lot of his students have never been west of Canary Wharf. You know, they don't, because they're kind of anchored at home still, and they've got the kind of culture of home. They don't become trainee bohemians. You know, they don't go away and live the student life. And I think that's a real shame, because that's one of the big things for me, was the fact that I was living away from home, and I had to throw my lot in with the student lifestyle. And I learned as much from living, you know, in squats and rented accommodation as I did at art school in many ways, from the people I hung out with. So I think that's a shame, and the fact that, you know, that there are ways of optimising what, you know, producing creative people. I think it's, you know, they'll produce different stuff. They're all like this now, of course. They'll probably produce some brilliant stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, in some ways, there's a bit of me that says, yeah, we don't need so many bloody artists. You know, I don't want the competition. On the other hand, I think it's great it's as many people as possible are, because it's a lot better than, you know, churning out, I don't know, golf course managers or whatever. It's like, you know, is it forensic science, because of all CSI and all those things, you know, forensic science. Thousands of people apply to do forensic science, and so they start up all these new courses. Apparently there's like 3 jobs a year. Yeah?
Yeah, just going back to your first slide, the headscarf. Back in the 80s, I seem to remember Nicholas Sirota, a lot of pressure, but he refused to buy a David Shepherd. Do you think he should succumb to the pressure of buying a Jack Vatriano?
Yeah. I mean, I put those 3 artists there, Banksy, Jack Vatriano and Beryl Cook. And David Shepherd would kind of fit in with that as well. Artists who are very popular and yet are completely excluded from the kind of contemporary art canon. And there's probably a good reason why they are. I mean, Banksy's interesting because he hovers on it. He lost me a bit when he started selling stuff in art galleries. I thought, and I quite liked him as a graffiti artist, but then when he was sort of selling things for £1 million in art galleries, I thought,
probably needed the money.
Sell out, really. But I suppose he's got to make money.
But it's money, it's the last question, it's subsidy on education, it's popular culture, culturutai. Who decides it? Who decides it if it's subsidised, if it's the melting pot? Nicholas does, Charles does in his own private way.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is with people like Banksy and all that, that they make good money without them being subsidised by like you say, yeah. So, and the minute that we allow the popular vote to decide what goes on in art galleries, I think will be dodgy. I mean, as it was a few years ago, I was worried that very rich art collectors were having too much sway in what was seen as good art. You know, all the oligarchs and hedge fund managers, they paid X amount of millions for an artwork, then it got a lot of headlines and press, and somehow, you know, by default almost, it became elevated in the art world because people go, oh, did you see how much that Coon's got, blah, blah, blah. You know, and, you know, traditionally, it's people like Nicholas Sirota and his staff that decide, in many ways, they put the big brownie point, the big validation stamp on art. And I think in many ways, that's as good as any. I mean, it's a collective, it's a consensus, and they are the people with the most power in the consensus. You know, they're the people that put you into the canon of contemporary art history. I don't think I'm there very securely. They've got shit bit of mine. But, you know, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I suppose there's enough room for all different ways of artists to operate. If you can sell loads of stuff to football managers, you know, and oligarchs, fine. You don't need. There's plenty of artists out there. I bet you could find artists who are really successful you've never heard of, that sell all their work to people with bad taste for loads of money. Good luck to them. But they might not crop up in, you know, the hip art history. One more question, I think we've got. Yeah? Is that all right? I don't know, I mean, I don't know, but you tell me. Yeah.
Do you reckon you can teach poetry?
Sorry?
Do you reckon you can teach poetry?
Teach poetry?
Yeah.
I mean, I think what Hockney was going on about when he said that was that, you know, you can, it's almost like you plant the seeds of the kind of becoming an artist when you're at art school. You don't, the really essential bit is a little bit mysterious, I think, a little bit, or it's a bit more intangible. And I think there's various ways of, you know, I'm not a great believer in any kind of mysterious, romantic idea of the individual artist, you know, this sort of genius figure that things just come naturally to, you know. I've had enough therapy, and I'm self-aware enough to know pretty much how I became the artist. That's because of practice. You know, I can look at my work and I say, that looks good because I practiced. That looks good because, you know, it's a bit like that, and I'm just like that, and that. I can unpick it for you. Whether you could teach that, it's a very, you know, it's a very complex thing, and I think that by the time you get people when they're like, what, 17, 18, you know, in a way, the damage is done. You know, and that damage is good damage, or it could be shit damage. You know, it's like, so I'm not going to say you have to have an unhappy life to be an artist, but the kind of, you know, your creative engine, if you like, the basic kind of parameters of it and dimensions of it are set out early. What you can do, of course, is put in good fuel and tune it up, and, you know, and I mean, people say to me, you know, you know, many artists, they don't like the idea of psychotherapy because they worry about losing their quirks. They think that their quirks are what makes them creative. But I always say, no, it's like going to having someone tidy up your tool shed. You know, it's like you've got the tools, but it's all covered in, they're all a load of rubbish and they're all messed up and you can't find any of them. And then somebody comes in and clears it all up. Still got all the tools, but you can find them and see them and use them and be more efficient and be aware of where they are, you know. And I think that's part of your job, I suppose, as teachers, is to say, oh, that you're really good at this and you should look at this, and kind of pick out the things that help people. Because, you know, you're getting them when they're still in the war. They're still with their families, and they're still fighting that kind of psychic battle growing up, especially when you're a teenager, you know. And I think that, you know, that's a unique time to sort of be encouraging about when you see the little glimmer of their enthusiasm and I'm not going to use the word originality, but just application. You know, someone that actually puts in the hours. I mean, you know, my friend who I'm going to talk with this afternoon at UEL, you know, he's constantly saying, these are people on a degree course. You can't believe how lazy they are, and he has to give them these big pep talks about, look, you know, as an artist, he sees me in the studio, and he often says to me, he says, Gray, you put in the hours. You put in the hours, mate. That's why you're fucking, you know, that's what makes it work. It's not. It's not this sort of, you know, and it's done. It's man hours. They're very important. That's what people are. You know, there's a psychological impact of man hours. And I think you can't. So these are the sorts of things you can give to them. I don't know if you can make them geniuses or whatever.